Hello and welcome to Say Hi to the Future, Ingenious Thinkers, a podcast aimed at highlighting the human side of ingenuity. What you're suggesting is different careers, different career paths. And how are we preparing people for smart cities versus, what we've been in the past, more hands-on, I guess, in many ways.
Well, because this is Say Hi to the Future, I'll just go really crazy here, and because you guys can handle really different concepts. I would actually not abandon, but I would step back from the word career or job or employment. I would step back from those concepts. We have had an economy which is based on someone having some resources, using that to create an enterprise, and then hiring humans to perform work that only those humans could do, then growing and scaling. The value of that enterprise is high. You sell it to another enterprise or you buy other enterprises, and you use humans in order to advance those kinds of things. I believe we're entering into a transitional kind of period in which humans add value. You're already seeing from enterprises a desire to step away from paying humans for what I grew up in my career. Healthcare, a 40-hour work week, weekends off, a specific job that I did. If I wanted a different job or they wanted me to do something different, I was promoted into a different job category or job title.
Right.
Those things are disappearing. You now have an opportunity to have a group of humans who could do anything potentially. They can learn on the fly, and you're kind of hiring or engaging them for totally different reasons: their adaptability, their resilience, their creativity, their location. And then you're plugging and playing according to opportunities of the moment. I don't know that that's going to be employment in the future. And a human can scale up to adding enormous amount of value to multiple so-called enterprises, and enterprises can have zero employees or they can have millions of employees.
Mm-hmm.
Based on a value exchange. And you just see pushback coming from workers who don't want to live where they're told, don't want to come to offices as they're told, and enterprises who don't want to maintain any type of social contract with their employees. And I think that that's the future. I think we're going to have, I have the capacity of doing this particular thing. You engage me for that. I add this amount of value. We negotiate for the compensation, and I move on to the next thing, and you move on to the next human. And for better or for worse, I think that's a scenario that we're probably headed towards.
People talk a lot about imposter syndrome. To me, it's also just realizing, look, if you build the confidence and you have some wins, just going that you're not always going to win. I mean, I'm a pretty good keynote speaker. I've done it in so many places, but I was flown out to, and I didn't know this existed. I don't know if you know it exists, the Potato Museum on the East Coast of Canada, to speak to a group of CEOs. Oh boy, that was a rough workshop, because everyone was in that mindset of it's who you know, not what you know. Let's go for lunch early. And I got over it. It wasn't that I was the wrong person. It was just that this was not the right crowd. And I think that what helped me there was, yes, building the confidence prior that I am okay at this. And you will have some times where you, as Howie Mandel says, you won't make the crowd laugh. And that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think for me, I've done a lot of public speaking like you have. And, I always go in thinking, okay, the guy still actually, I'll give you an example of something I did where I thought, okay, I have to stop this and turn. And this was a little while back, but I was doing a session at a university and it was on diversity, equity, inclusion. And I realized partway through what I was doing, that group was very European. They had come from overseas, and their knowledge of history, racism that we would experience in North America was not the same. Their view was very, very different.
Mm-hmm.
And so I sort of took a break and thought, I'm not gonna continue with this, like the slides. And it's very interactive. And I thought, okay. So I asked a question, which led to another question, which led to kind of peeling apart the onion, if you will, on their understanding of race and racism and presumed assumptions. And boy, oh boy, was that ever fascinating for me. And as it was for them, I think, because it was like, I never thought of it that way. I never thought of it that way. And I thought, okay, I'm loving this. But I had a plan. The plan just went this way.
Yeah.
But I think if you're a good leader and a good facilitator and someone who knows your stuff, that like I don't need that. I mean, it's there to stick to a certain framework. But if that audience is not aligning with that, then then I can go in a different route. And I think part of that is being experienced, but part of it is my confidence comes from knowing what I know. Like I know my stuff, I know my data, I know my content, but I also read a fair bit. So there's a lot of conversations that I can have. And when there is a bit of someone said to me, how do you deal with disagreement when someone's saying, but that, and I go back to data. I tend to lean back on
Right.
data and say, well, this is what the numbers say. This is what the facts say. So you can disagree. I mean, I can't, if you want to you can keep disagreeing with the numbers. I can't change that. But what I can do is I can say my perspective isn't just an opinion or an observation. It's also anchored in real numbers and facts.
Another thing you wrote about was contagious enthusiasm and obsession with metrics. So let's break that down. What's contagious enthusiasm?
I think one of the things I learned really early on, and one of my first jobs kind of out of university was with a sporting goods store in Edmonton, where I grew up. And it was a family-run business, but it'd been around 75 years, and the general manager and everybody was part of this family. And I've never seen somebody more enthusiastic every day. And the one guy, he had sort of retired, but I think in a family business, you never really retire. So he handed the reins over, but was like still very, very involved. And he just came to the store all the time with like so many ideas. And we all thought they were crazy at the time, but he never let up. Like he was like, nope, we're doing this. It seems impossible, but we're gonna make it happen. And some of them were amazing and some of them were crazy. And like, but he was so he had this way about him that he could either, because he was the boss, he could tell you had to do it, but also he had this enthusiasm that was like, it made you want to try and tackle this thing with him, this crazy idea. So I think that was my kind of first exposure to probably the first like inventor or person that was really pushing the envelope. And so I took that into some of my jobs where maybe at AOL, doesn't even exist really anymore, but they wanted, I think they had $150,000 left of budget in the year. And as a Canadian subsidiary, you're like, if you don't spend it, you don't get it the next year. So like have to find something that we could do with this $150,000, which isn't that much money, right? Like that is gonna give us a return or give us a boost. So they were like, Andrea, it's October, by the way. So we literally have from like October to December to spend this money. And they're like, what can we do with it? You have ideas. What can we do with this 150,000? So the team at the time, we decided we would do these, it was called AOL music sessions. And we could choose all these artists and film and record live sessions with them. It was really cool. And we had just enough money to do 6 and just enough time to like squeak it out by December 31st to film them all. But we didn't have the resources. We didn't even have the knowledge. I think we flew down to the US and watched them film one just to try to learn like what do we do and what does the B-roll interviews look like and the finished product and all this kind of stuff. And the only way I had to get it to the finish line was to get everybody excited because I was asking favors that were outside of everybody's jobs. It was just me and then nobody else supporting. So leading with that kind of like contagious enthusiasm to get people on board and get people excited and all be going to one goal, I think has served me all along the way. Like just getting people excited about where you're trying to go makes such a difference.
Yeah. You're really creating a community, and if I understand, a support system for the entrepreneurs and a connectivity again across such a large area. How does that work? How has it sort of evolved?
So before it was, like I said, just the one in-person one in Ottawa. Now we choose a few powwows. So depending on where we are across Turtle Island, 5 to 7 per year. And then we have an online version where people could submit their 60-second pitch. And so we get just get that. And then so it's narrowed down. But whoever wins the in-person powwow pitch skips through the semifinal and just goes straight through to the final round where we give away 25,000 in the grand finale. So
Very
yeah.
cool. And have you been able to track sort of the successes or where some of the companies are at?
Yeah, like we actually, one of our alumni, they started an alumni fund within within Powwow Pitch. So and now some of our, our first and second powwow pitchers, they're now part of our board. We have an advisory council, and it's just like they tell us and they tag us in things. So it's mostly organic at this point. But we're working on really, for our funders, because they want to see how our entrepreneurs are doing as well. So yeah.
Very cool. Is there a company or two you can mention, like their products or what's out there?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. I like one of my favorites is McKaylee Lazor. She was one of our first powwow pitchers, and she runs Sequoia soaps, and she just came in and said the one thing she wanted to do with $5,000 was change her branding, because when she was in person selling, she would do very well, but as soon as she wasn't there, like she wouldn't do as well. And that's all she did was change her branding, and she's just been skyrocketing ever since. And it's such, she creates employment now within her community. She has this whole setup where, there's like 15 full-time staff, and she just created this out of her mind, out of what she did, and now she employs 15 people, and I think that's something to celebrate. And we have other people who it's beadwork, and they are, self-sufficient doing beadwork, and that's a success too. So we don't just look at like, wow, you're employing and you're so huge and the monetary, value of your company, but if you are able to be home and create, be self-sufficient, wow, like we need to celebrate that too.
In what ways does financial literacy help youth break the cycle of generational poverty? Because again, in prepping for today, I think that that is something that I don't know, you can correct me, but that's where your passion or that's where your drive came from, is to help everybody, as you say, start at least with no debt, to have an even start when university's done or college is done.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, for us, I mean, a lot of habits are formed in the house, right? It could be eating habit, financial habit. They all start in the household. And so our focus is to really help to change that, to help kids to start making smarter decisions, to be able to rationalize money. Even, in my culture, for example, and when I say my culture, I'm talking about Black culture, Jamaican culture. The way that we even think about money and generational wealth is not the same as in certain other communities, right? Even though the platform is built for everyone, the idea is that we want to start to help people to make smarter decisions. So if there is no generational wealth that's handed over, right? Because a lot of parents, believe it or not, a lot of parents believe that, okay, it's, kids should take on a lot of debt, for example, to pay for their tertiary education. But we want to say to parents, that is not the case. If we can help every child to start university without student debt, then we're setting them up on the right path. But we also want kids to now understand and be able to break that cycle by making the decisions, but also if they decide to have kids, to have these healthy conversations with those kids around money, right? So that cycle does not continue. For me, when I look back at my upbringing and my journey, if I had certain things in place, right, certain financial resources to support some of the decisions that I wanted to make, I would not have to take on so much debt. Like I had to take on significant amount of student debt to get life started. And it's almost like you're starting off with 10 steps behind compared to other students who have that luxury of just getting directly into pursuing what they want without worrying about paying significant student debt. In Canada alone, debt is about 40 billion. And in the US, it's even worse, right? So that's what breaking generational cycle looks like, setting up people, for success from the start.
I love that thought, especially as a way to end it. And what I love about it, it's not just opening the door for the child to go on to higher learning or higher post-secondary education. It's done based on learning a really important life skill, which hopefully they repeat, as you said, they have their own children and build generational wealth. I also think it helps to relieve a lot of emotional stress from parents because you work very hard. Many or most in Canada would see or appreciate college or university, but it's really expensive. And unfortunately, and through no fault of anybody, you can't always help as much as you want. So I think you're helping the child, but I think you're really relieving a stressor from a lot of parents who, as parents, we find we find a lot of reasons to be guilty about things we think we couldn't do for our children, but I think this is a very real one. So, you know what, Andre, again, you're the founder of Flip and Floss, helping support the development, financial literacy in children, and I think really supporting families as a whole. Just thank you so much. And each and every award that you've earned, boy, do you deserve it. So continued success.
And the one thing I want to add as well, because yes, you're absolutely right. It's about helping families. And that was part of the reason why we conceptualized this Earn As You Learn. I didn't mention it earlier, where kids can earn flip dollars as they're learning on our platform. Because one of the issues we're looking at challenging is poverty in schools. We don't believe that students should be learning on an empty stomach. And so the idea of earning as they learn is that they can get these rewards on our platform that they can then use to purchase a meal in school or through one of our partners. That is something that's also very dear to the team at Flip and Floss as well. But thank you so much, Ken. This was really great talking to you. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about the incredible work that we've been doing.
And I was like, there's so much that we don't know, and most people don't have the time to attend conferences. I almost feel like there should be this format in a book. Someone should write a book. And then I was like, wait a minute, that person can be me, because I do wear so many different hats. And it really occurred to me, as you read out earlier, it doesn't matter if you're an educator, a parent, a CEO of a company. Why should this sector matter to me? And so that was how I went about curating and choosing the individuals to write in the book. So the book is segmented into games, women in games, investing in games, games in the workplace, for instance, games in education. And so the authors span 5 continents, a whole range of ages and ethnicity to showcase the diversity of games. And Ken, earlier you said, maybe, there's at some point, you've gone too far in one field to be able to enter this industry. I absolutely disagree. There, if you feel that, okay, again, there's everyone's skill set, there's the skill sets that are required are so vast that there is a place for everyone in this industry if that's where they want to be.
And can you dive into some of the specific essays? Maybe one or two that are most relevant to today?
Yeah, so I give an example of, for instance, so many parents want their kids to be gainfully employed, and they're like, especially Asian parents, be a doctor, be a lawyer, or whatever. So one of the authors, Jeannie Doi, she's a lawyer, but her whole practice is focused on gamers. So esports athletes, specifically that have been tapped to play for teams in the US, and she helps them with the whole immigration process. So that is that is her niche, and that is her business. And she has a fabulous practice. So it's so I use that as an example. And she obviously writes about how she grew up playing games also, but then how
Sure.
she managed to leverage, being a lawyer and merging that into the esports sector. So it's an example of someone that maybe you didn't think, oh, well, lawyer, how does that kind of segue into gaming? There's another fabulous essay by Kate Edwards, and Kate has a PhD in geography. And you're like, okay, PhD in geography, like how does that tie in? And so what happened was Microsoft hired her, and she came up with a whole department that essentially was to do with world building. And because when you build worlds, you need to want to make sure that you're doing it accurately. Maybe you want to make sure the flags that you're putting out there are accurate. So all these different divisions of people in Microsoft would go to her, and then eventually her department, to make sure they were being true to what was going on in the real world. And so again, that's an example of an individual who you wouldn't think would ever end up in this field, but that she's made a very big name for herself in this field.
How do we help achieve food sovereignty then? You have a delicacy, you want to turn that into a staple, because I'm guessing it's an accessible delicacy. I'm guessing that insects are plentiful, and correct me if I'm wrong, but how do you take the plenty and get it out to people?
Yeah, I think that, in terms of how we can all support food sovereignty, I think we can all support food that is made on a smaller scale, food that is produced locally, and food that is also processed close to its origin. So I'll give you sort of an example that's really well known, which is cocoa. Ghana is actually the second largest exporter of cocoa in the world. Yet such little value around the cocoa remains in Ghana, or remains at the farmer level. In fact, many farmers that are farming cocoa are living in abject poverty. And so really a lot of the value happens where, or a lot of the value is created at the processing site. And so, when you buy chocolate that's made in Ghana, for example, you're really helping to support a lot of the value creation staying close to the farmer. It's actually very ironic that most of the people that go hungry in the world are actually producing food. And it's extremely ironic, because you would think, well, if you're producing food, then you shouldn't have to suffer of hunger. But that's actually not the case. And there's a lot of irony in that. And there's a lot that we can do to support sort of more sustainable and equitable food systems. In terms of the larva, what we do is we have a vertical farming system. So we've said, hey, this larva grows out in the wild, and basically, the larva turns into a weevil, which is the mom and the dad stage. So very much like a caterpillar turns into a butterfly, the same way a larva turns into a weevil. And so what we've done is we've created an ecosystem where the larva and the weevils really thrive, and they reproduce and they grow. And what we have done is to farm them in a vertical way. So it's much more space efficient, land efficient. We use minimal water, and we're able to then produce this in a much more resource efficient manner that also translates into the product being more accessible as well. In that process, we also create many jobs. We also secure offtake from smallholder farmers, because we also need to feed our insects as well. So yeah, we have a system like that. And the last thing is really that we also produce a farm waste that's then turned into organic fertilizer. So we really try to keep like sort of a very circular approach to our farming system.
I mean, you're starting with your tribe, a specific tribe, yours, Is this a model that as you finish your doctorate and as you build your process, is this a model that you hope to see, continue through into the US, other parts of the US?
Yeah, definitely. I don't know of any other forensic laboratories that are specifically working for the tribes, or I know of another that went the nonprofit route, as we have Intermountain Forensics. So they've been a huge help in getting the nonprofit side and answering questions that I have about that. But yeah, I don't know of anyone else really trying to assist the tribes of the US specifically. And so for Okamee, starting with the Blackfeet Reservation, I'm hoping to expand to the other tribes in Montana and, maybe later down the road, other tribes in the US and in Canada, because the Blackfeet Reservation extends into Canada as well. So we have a lot of relatives up there too. And, the rates are just as high, if not higher up there for missing or Indigenous women.
Yes, as a Canadian, I can say that's been quite a stain on our history. I think what you're doing is unbelievable when you say the first. I mean, that's other than just being incredibly important for you to step up and do it, for anyone to step up and do something and be the first at it is it's truly remarkable. So
yeah, thank you. Yeah, I honestly didn't really plan to start my own company, right away. A lot of us in the university go towards these degrees and, you're thinking, okay, I got to take these classes and I got to do this so that I can get a job here or, whatever. But kind of looking around in Montana, I haven't really seen job positions that were open specifically for what I'm going to school for and what I'm trying to do. And so, I'm kind of at the point where I'm like, well, I guess I just have to create my own.
and that's why you're part of Ingenious Thinkers. It's
Yeah.
about people who just see that challenge and find a way. So again, congratulations on that.
Thank you. Yeah.